rubble brewing. Young women running around the streets, slinging Asgalish propaganda to unsuspecting citizens. Boys causing chaos in the name of some hapless magazine-inspired rebellion. This cannot be tolerated. No, it cannot. Too much chaos has been caused by these damn kids. Indeed, this must be solved. With the might of the state, we shall. The Asgard youths did nothing to warrant such pushback. This era is one of communication. Ideas interchange freely between a populace of free-minded thinkers, folk dreaming of an egalitarian potential. However, the problem lies with the unfortunates who break sincere Folkarian thought with reckless unkindness. You must pray for them, beg of them, to please stop being so mean. Do you really think that would work? One can wish. Those boys might be unkempt and rough, but they are proud citizens of a great city. They are performing a service, albeit a crude one beyond the realm of law. But the youth Asgos, they are even more unlawful, to a much steeper degree. Steeper? How do you calculate that degree of unlawfulness? Entirely through the morality of their behavior. I see. What has happened here is complication upon society, a representation of the wider culture. Young men are drawn towards the rough, downtrodden world of the dreamers, the hope of national unity through an Earthian story, one of leadership and honor. But without that guiding star, there is no such singularity, no control, no wise king to bend the knee to. Instead, those boys are simply expressing pain through violence, enacted onto those who are attempting to craft a more caring future. That is, young women. They, as opposed to young men, are drawn towards a more social type of unity, with welfare in Asgalian flattened hierarchical structure. Beyond Asgard himself, who is by his function also a male figure, it is to womanly people you shall look towards. Lady Fair is one. The halfling god? Yes, Lady Fair and those not, the walking god who gave everything to save her people. Lady Fair and those not, a young halfling leads her clan through a mountain pass and defends it for 3 days and 3 nights. She is known to be responsible for the founding of the Fortnip Commonwealth, the unified states of halfling lands in western Ascan, also known as the Clan Lands. They were allies of Norvik in the early days of the conquest. Today, the relationship is strained after Norvik refused to aid them against the Golden Horde. Her words are few but spread far across the coast. Her church is quite active among Norvikian society as an organization of charity, one open to all folk, no matter their origin. An egalitarian dream. This is why women, as harsh as it is to say, are simply more suited for Norvikian leadership. Lady Fair makes it clear. A house held by women stands any reason. But I want to lead in the future, and I am not a woman. Does that mean you can bring wisdom and goodness to the world as a man? But if a woman rises to the occasion, you must make an effort to enable her rise. There is something so powerful about dreams. Ideas spreading from a man to woman, woman to man. But the Asgalian dream is not a blessing. It is a smile wrought in pain, a vision of 1,000 layers of interested nets and labels, tangling every person and snaring them into oppressor or oppressed. And there is oppression. There are unfair hierarchies. The world is corrupt. But not fundamentally. If these boys are pushing back against Asgardism, that is only natural. It is an ideology which pushes a foundational belief that they are naturally oppressively superior. If a young man grows up in a squalor, finding zero advantage from him being a man among patriarchs, nor any power from being a human, especially if he grows up within non-human clusters, something many of the poorest humans do, when he is unable to find a job at age 19 and has almost no political, societal or economic power in his life, which dreams do you think he would believe in? The one calling him to fight to reclaim what is his by right, a good life as a future patriarch, or the one calling him an oppressor? He does not call him an oppressor. That is an unfair reading. Asgalism is about systemic change. That young man is trapped in the same cycle of violence that all men find themselves since the dawn of time. That he must fight, that he must be a patriarch to have that good life. Asgalism would lay the foundation that allows him to be free from these burdens. He would be free to find that job, that good life, with the same prospects as everyone else. That foundation is laid by raising women to the forefront, by allowing them to flatten our hierarchies and bring about a new world. I'm sure there's a female perspective here somewhere as well, but I've only really read about that in Mom's books. You need to come to that realization. The one every boy reaches towards the late stages of their capitalistic, pubertistic, and socialistic awakenings that... No, not at all. It's only your placement you must understand. Figure out where you've planted those 2 feet of yours, and accept where your bones will begin their unnecessarily slowish grind into the pavement. Learn more. Steal yourself. Seek love. Be more. Oh, it is such a simple answer. Ha! As you compare and contrast, as you break away the many specific biases and little intricacies that makes each man a man and each woman a woman, what is left is but the soul of these folks, these creatures of biological realities and spiritual happenstances, each of them loving and holding and hating and screaming, within yours arbitrary spectrum, within some neatly organized checkboxes on a governmental form, within the heart and genitalia of each young, virile, beastly person who stress across this artificial landscape. They think so much, they feel so much, both as one. They are. Man and woman are innumerably more similar than they have ever been different. Oh. Any kind of statistical calculation or divine attributed senses will always point in this exact direction. Any kind of statistical calculation or divinely attributed sciences will always point in this exact direction. There are extremely minor divergences in the averages. These are negligible. The default man and the default woman are going to be, in every single way that matters on a broader scale, equal. That doesn't make any sense. They look real different. The outside, yes. Those are the biological realities. Realities that do affect opinions and reactions and opportunities and lifestyles and love itself. But it does not make for a statistical internal life scale difference. But like, only on the inside? In most ways, yes. However, those minor differences on the average, they coagulate towards the extremes. A bell curve. It's a miracle the green one took this long to figure it out. What does that mean? If men are 1,000% more aggressive than women in the averages, that is nothing but an indication of this. The most violent people in society are all men. This means both of these following statements are fully true. First statement, men and women are the same. Second statement, men and women are different in the extremes. And how does that affect reality exactly? In this way. One in extreme case, does gender affect anything? If you're dealing with the most empathic people in the world, they will almost all be women. If you're dealing with the most competitive people in the world, they will almost all be men. Yet for the vast majority of groups and or collections of people, the more empathic and competitive are just as likely to be either men or women. This gender divide is not something you should use to judge or evaluate average people in average day-to-day life. It is only relevant in vastly wide distributions. You will always have more male criminals. You always have more female Asgilists. But only because the most violent people become criminals, the most lovely people become Asgilists. Something about that last part sounds incorrect. It is something to think about. Now, you must choose. What? Choose a side, as difficult as it might be. What should I choose? Like, which one would be the most useful? Now, honestly, you must think of this as a representation of your future struggles. In other words, the person who blew up the tea shop, the one who must discard, will it be a man or a woman? It could be either. A man! A sorcerer would surely be able to sling such esoteric force, but a man is more likely to enact it. Tell me about future patriarch. A brotherhood, a patriarchy, a good and just world. It is within your grasp. Tell me more about Lady Fair. The halflings built a religion out of feminine love. We can do something similar. What does feminine and masculine mean in this context? It means where the target lands on your gender spectrum, they will always be on one side of this esoterically decided middle point. If you disagree with the judgment, take it up with your... This is the probable outcome, yes. But do not always assume the gender placement of a target. The world is often more complicated than you initially imagined. I'm ready to make a decision. Do so. Stand tall. Do not be afraid. It is done. The feminine has entered into your body, your soul, your blood. Be kind to all. This bin is making a sound, a strange sound. How strange. Don't fall for it. This is some type of scam, surely. Getting you to root around the trash. The voice is from a primal spirit. Open it. It gives you a nonchalant half shrug. It's rather late. There's always something going on here. As you lift the side, you immediately see something moving in a pile of shredded documents and old scraps of food. A pair of legs. Suddenly jumping out of the pile with a puff of moldy dust is a pine cone. A pine cone with limbs. Hands you some leaves while doing a strange, seemingly improvisational dance upon the trash. Wait, are you one of those? Before you're able to do anything about it, the little creature poofs away. One of nature's essential workers. A blessing to meet it in the wild. Disgusting little creature. As it fades, you see only trash. I've heard about those things, never seen them though. What do you know about them? Just what I read in the paper, and what Nessun goes on about. They're called Vatar or something. The Lamplighters Guild had a public spat with them a couple of months back. Points to the lamps behind you. Apparently they'd messed with the everlasting lights. Not so everlasting then. Heh, guess it's a PR name. Get why they were mad, but I think they showed everything once the PCG got involved. And they're supposed to be all over the gardens too. Not that I've ever seen one. Anyhow, they clearly seem to like you. Let's keep it like that. The Ascani Reed's Trading Company, with that signature Free Strider logo. A sign says, we're closed for today, our stuff. Torna, first of the Rebel Guild. Deep groaning, the bell of Waterlane. The dwarf gazes across the dockyard. A cleric? Sorry, I'm busy. Excluding the anti-magic messaging, Free Striderism comes with great branding. No one can dismiss the dwarf's architectural genius. Office of Snurre Appledent. Children's drawing on the wall. Magical quill and paper. Almost dead, but not yet. Something at the bottom. Coins. A scholarly commentation of the Fortnip Commonwealth. Something stuck between the pages. A scholar of the Fortnip Commonwealth, a man working out of hole in the wall. This is the type of man who knows exactly where he's going, and is simply going there very slowly and deliberately. He knows his expertise, his moves are calculated, his journey long. The esoteric is closely tied with scholarly arts. In the old days, no distinction between the two was made. But today, in this modern world, his side is all but winning. He has spent quite some time reading up on his art. It is interesting. Research is the first step to grounded spellcasting after all. But beyond his facade as a dispenser of knowledge, this halfling is also searching for answers to his own questions. Namely, what is the nature of power? Politics? The golden line? Take a step into the cramped office, standing in front of a sleeping halfling. This is a scholar. Curse the gods. Go investigate his book collection before waking the lazy halfling. I'll leave him alone for now. Collection of books, political mostly. You see a collection of books from the philosophy canon, none of which you are really able to understand. Next to them, a line of famous political books: Asgil's Theory, Hedonists, The Dark Book of Shadow, Alexandro, many more. Hedonists, anarchistic movement spawned towards the end of the Coast War. They dealt with abyssal forces and somehow published The Hedonists, an instructional booklet that made its way across the coast. No free strider work. Disappointing. This scholar has good taste. You pick up the black-covered tome. A faint tingle goes through your gloved hand. That's the most evil book I've ever seen. How did they even get the cover to be that black? It's like a void. Thickened graphene. That is how they create the darkness on the cover. A memory lingers in the stone. If you open it, you shall recall. The text is not dangerous. The pages show but the holy scripture of the Shadow Lord's lost religion, one of eternal servitude and the search for life in death. However, you remember it well. This was the first book you were ordered to study as punishment for your idiotic behavior at the towers. You remember your first journey towards the esoteric. How liberating it was to know beyond any doubt how much greatness hid within your mind. Blurred faces, hushed whispers, a crowd of thoughtful peers, each snickering about your hand. A raised hand, among a crowd of sheep. Patriarch, it's not just a religious text. They stare at you. It's a spell book. Those were the words. Oh, how they laughed. He asked you to prove yourself, so you did. I went up to the Patriarch, took the Book of Shadow. Yes. Then I. Yes. You memorized it on the spot. Then you cast that ancient spell once used by the Death Knights of the Shadow Lord to subjugate and control the minds of his people. A spell that is, despite its first level, not learned by most clerics until they grasped the intricacy of higher tier casting. Everyone was left stunned by your excellence. Not only master such a spell, but to do it in seconds instead of days. That moment, it was yours. From that moment you marked your place at the towers as the greatest spellcaster, the greatest talent amongst them all. However, as always, the weak fear the strong. That moment also began your ostracization. You would never be among them, never have peers. None would see you in any way as a brother or a comrade. I would be a leader. You are. And you shall continue to be. The vision is blurry. It is filled by the pages of that book. It is a good one, despite its religious fervor. As many say, the Shadow Lord was as much an early Arcanist as he was the greatest of the walking gods. The first few pages are devoted to a rambling text about the history of governing, from ancient texts from various beasts of yore to gods of the divine era to several Arcanist figures. Darrow then smoothly moves on to conflate their accomplishments with his own, especially since he also included an explanation of his lineage, that he is a direct firstborn grandson of Borgo Darrow, the first paladin of Earth. It is not so subtle. The many pages go on to describe both practical but mostly theoretical methods as statements should use when dealing with the populace, the bureaucracy and the ideologies of modern life. You haven't read this before. Luckily, you don't have time to do so now either. Generally, the book has a rather rough tone about democracy. The quote you've heard before from this book pops up towards the end. Those who believe in democracy have a wonderful few of folk to think them capable of making rational and informed decisions devoid of personal bias and emotional conduct. From what you remember, it caused quite the stir when it came out 2 years ago. Quite anti-democratic. No wonder people were upset to have a magistrate use such terrible language. You recall a rumor about Shield Lord Yarn having hated this book so much during its printing that he personally bought 200 copies only to burn them in his garden. It is probably not true. Probably. You do so. The book. The book. Always listen to your hungry stomach, it says with big ugly letters on the first page. You should listen to the book and the stomach. This wonderful manual. Same as always, the book begins with a tirade about property ownership. Then, on the 5th page, you find a diagram showing how to ritualistically summon a demon. It isn't correct, however, on purpose, supposedly. Purpose is metaphoric criticism of authoritarian governments. The rest is a series of extreme essays on the topics of hedonism, rejection of statehood, free association, maximizing sensation, direct democracy and reciprocal exchange. Paints up an image of an ideal world where all can live without strife simply through the cooperation and love of all things. A loving image, community loving. Made illegal in many cities after its release in 466 IE, this rambling text has survived for one reason or another. It is the thing that makes you feel good. The text of truth. You flip the page to 52, you remember it well. It has pictures. Tiny scribblings. Something akin to stick figures positioning in various enwrapped unities. You remember the words well. The guide on how to make ultimate sensation of flesh. Kinda hot, in a sad way. Remember it well. You will need it one day. Close the book. Reading filth like this will only darken your mind. The hedonists are back on the shelf. Alexandro, this was the first book placed in your hands as an Earthfolk recruit. Open it. It is an old, worn copy of that same text. Musing about the divine era of great walking gods in their theocratic states. A history lesson, morphing into a series of guidelines. How modern leaders, as a response to the drawn-out Coast War, should return to the old. The proven, the organized, the divine. Although written from the perspective of not faith nor service to the holy, but rather that of service to the state. A modern theocratic vision. The nation as an entity not bound by the protection and lifetime of its god. Instead, the nation-state will survive on unifying cultural traits passed down from that god to his people. This, Alexandro writes, will fasten them into the earth, creating firm groundings for the state to exist beyond any others. The later chapters go on to describe his dream of a millennium empire, his grand plan, a nation to survive the passing of eras. Collection of ideas he gathered in his dream, an ideology structured around order, without the weakness of monarchy, the chaos of democracy, or the esoteric dependency of majocracy. The Millennium Empire, the fascist ideal. Dangerous ideas. Fascism has led many cities astray in reads. Whatever your thoughts are, this book is used to reshape the city. You know well how effective it is. Just remember, it was written by a gnome. It was what? Alexandro was a gnome. Tried using the so-called Fasci di Condottieri, the great mercenary warlords of old Dimnor, to bring order to the neglected parts of the band. He was, however, ultimately destroyed by the same warlords he created when his followers failed in their coup of Salvani. Ironically, the responsible quadrupole did not realize who they had killed at first. They had simply been hunting down any non-humans in the city. This was not openly spoken about during your training. But yes, it is true. Something to ponder. His followers misunderstood his message then. If a message is misconstrued, Is that the fault of the reader or the writer? I don't know. It is both. That is indeed very ironic. Indeed it is. Close it and place it back in its spot. Good forenoon, citizen. Oh, he mutters in one of his bushy eyes. His confused gaze focuses on you. Life is a pain. What? Terrible, terrible pain, oh. He mutters and rubs his face. The wrinkles fall over one another like waves on a storied sea. Are you? He looks at you with his weary expression. Then he rubs his nose and sniffs twice. Are you here for the invoice? Quick glance to Snell. His words come out in typical foreign accent. No. 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 Oh. Oh. No. What? The invoice. I don't have any invoice, not for you to the least. Should I have an invoice? No. No? No? Oh. Oh, hold on. I already paid that invoice. You're here for something different. He leans in, facing Snell. Hope Queen Goblin has no quarrel with this old scholar. He holds up a pound. Nah, we're here on city business. I'm exploring random buildings and yours was unlocked. That's not... So you're a trespasser of benevolent intent. I guess that's not too far off. Curiosity is absolutely vital for keeping the old brain in motion, so I commend you, Cleric. And you as well, my goblin friend. He looks around grunting. Can I get either of you some fucking water, or... He will swear words like coastal winds. You like this guy. He's like a rabid dog without the biting, so far. This halfling is wild, in a fun way. Well, no thank you, your companion replies very quickly. You're Snurre Appledent, right? Me? Yes. I'm Snurre Appledent, he says and bows his head in the chair. Scholar of Fortrip University, in dedicated service to the progress of IIS. Short for Alignment Intended Studies. It's a very specialized field of study that focuses on the esoteric effect of alignment. It practically uses the various ways to interact with it. But what exactly do you do? Many things. Primarily my expertise lands on the topic of alignment and its many historical and contemporary applications. Some bullshit, I will tell you. These days I mostly deal with other forms of study. Specifically, I run this office here on the experimental technique of psychoanalysis. Ah, yes. He's a scholar of civics. Modern psychoanalysis is an offshoot of his methods. What kind of magic is that? No magic at all. Although there has been some detect thoughts involved at some point in this development. It is a form of mind healing, as they call it. I'll be one to call it support instead. It is essentially the idea that the mental present is shaped by the mental past, and that through dialogue, our unreleased unconscious ghosts can be vanquished. An exorcism? Almost. While the ghosts are metaphorical, it is really not that different from the expulsion of a necrotic possession. A Retsenian friend of mine once told me this joke, and I apologize if it's too vulgar for your taste, but he sputters out the words through a little chortle. How vulgar? Very vulgar. Go on. It's about a woman's private parts. Go on. Right. A cleric, an arcanist, and a rogue delve into the lair of a succubus. The fiend defeats all three men, throwing them in her dungeon. But as she grows to fancy them, so she offers them a choice. For each man who can successfully satisfy her, she will let that man go. Otherwise, he speaks with a little fits of laughter in between. She wants them, so to say. This is going to be a long tale. You actually haven't heard this one. If it is sacrilegious, you have to beat the gnome. succubus? Such a fiend would never offer such terms to mortal men.
Yes, let me tell the joke. So the three adventurers debate in which order to go. Eventually the rogue and arcanist decide the cleric should go first, as he is a virgin and will be least likely to increase her standards.
Your goblin companion rubs his eyes as he listens to the joke.
The cleric, being divine and so on, prays to his god and goes to the fiend's bedchambers. He comes out 10 minutes later, completely unarmed, and gives a thumbs up to his two friends, who of course both feel a great sense of relief. The arcanist goes in next, confident and arrogant. If the cleric could do it, the fiend must be easy. Within minutes, his bones roll out of the bedchamber entrance, the men having been incinerated by hellish flames. The rogue is horrified, but realizes, obviously, the arcanist overestimated his abilities. So he carefully enters the bedchamber, ready to put out every ounce of effort into it. Less than a minute later, screams erupt from the bedchamber, and the rogue's lifeless corpse falls out of the entrance. The cleric prays for the souls of his comrades and gathers their remains for burial. The succubus steps out, smoking a cigarette. She tells the cleric, "My, your friends were truly terrible. They was just fumbling about down there. At least you managed to touch it a little." To which the cleric responds, "You are truly an awful creature, and I will pray for your presence to be exorcised from this plane of existence every day until the day I die." Then, before he walks away, the cleric also asks, "Oh, but I did heal that horrible wound you had between your legs. Hopefully that makes you less evil in the future." The goblin lets out a slight gust of wind through his nose.
Ha ha ha! I get it! The halfling chorus loudly.
My kind of humor, you might say. In short, you can view the succubus as an evil in the world which religious fervor would pray to repair. However, such reparation could often lead to a not so optimal path.
Keeps on laughing.
Or, more simply, you could say it's basic allegory for alignment itself. The cleric meant well for all intents, but his actions cost the lives of both his comrades. Is that evil, or is it good? And so on. Either way, psychoanalysis. Yes, that's what we were talking about. It's about your feelings, thoughts, memories, choices you made, things that have happened to you. They can bog you down, so to say, and the goal is my clinical practice is to root that out in my patients' minds and help make them aware of repressed negative baggage, if you will, so no one can move forward more speedily.
I don't have any repressed negative feelings.
A bold claim! Well, it's not the only thing I work on here. I'm currently exploring the dream of animus.
That's something to do with masculinity and femininity, based on Civilic's ideas. A dream of man and woman. What a pervert. You like this guy. You explore men and women?
Poor phrasing, but yes. Beyond that, I also focus a lot on my own unverified theories.
He slaps his knees and grins.
The folk spirit. Have you heard of it?
It's something he made up. Doesn't mean it's not correct though. Sounds like a collective folk view on morality. Is that some kind of unified moral or ethical code of people or culture?
No, it's...
He leans back and squints.
That's not actually that far off. You got a head on you, Cleric. The folk spirit is the working title for my new thesis. Most of it is, if you excuse my Anuran, fucking bullshit.
Anura, a fancy name for frog folk and toad folk. You've heard they don't like those terms for some reason.
But in short, it's about how each folk share a number of core communal archetypes, or myths. I've traveled around the coast to collect as many tales, writing down thousands of stories previously only passed down orally. I want to see how well my theory holds up in the mind of so many folk.
Clears his throat and leans back into the chair.
Apologies. I'm ranting here. Let's put a stop to it. What do you want, Cleric?
What is love?
Love!
He lets out a frustrated groan.
Pure calamity. Deadly and destructive. Its nature is just perverted and foul. Because it is complete surrender without idealization. To love is to accept without proof or demand or conditions. It is complete surrender to another. Ridiculously risky.
This guy's more fucked up than you are. Do you know a lot about love?
Sure I do. My wife would certainly attest to it despite my horrid nature. And the familial love is close to my heart as well. My 2 boys are my most prized works.
You have a wife and kids?
Yes, but nothing we need to talk about. Private life is private, and so on, he says with a laugh.
He does not wish to speak about this, not one bit. His personal life leaves a twinge of pain in the creases of his eyes every time he thinks of it. Ah, this scholar's got one hell of a messed up family then. Don't push it. He won't talk, nor is it interesting. So I shouldn't love? He shrugs.
If you can, yes. Of course you should not take such a risk bet.
Then he takes a breath, calming himself down for the punchline.
Love is a completely unpredictable and dangerous encounter. And I have yet to meet a sentient folk which is not afflicted by it. And interestingly enough, I see no difference. It is universal. Elf love, halfling love, devil love. True love is always irrational. It is finding the perfect inside of the imperfect, but failing entirely into it, swallowed by it. Some folk might act it out in different ways, depending on their communal nature or biological urges. But if you're one of the few who do not need it, good. Be happy. If you're not, then good luck, and may the gods bless your soul.
What are you voting in the election?
I'm a filthy Asgardist.
Oh? Why?
Pragmatic dogma. The green banner is flown in a strange context here in this Republican wet dream of ours. Asgardism is supposed to be about abolishing the entire structure of hierarchy. That history is driven by economic struggles, specifically the clash between classes. Asgard's end goal is a classless, stateless society where everyone's equal. But looking at the Norwegian Asgardists, it is clear to me they long ago let this goal slip past. Look at them. They are shaking hands with the establishment, trying to find a peaceful solution, they say.
You want a violent revolution? He frowns.
Look,
the hairy halfling mutters.
Genuine change, true change. It's a true revolutionary break with the existing order. There's no doubt about that. Incremental reforms, small changes within the capitalistic system will always fail to address its fundamental contradictions and injustices. My time in Reeds made that clear to me. But always be wary of simplistic utopian visions. It is path covered in corpses that leads such blind idealism. So I will vote for this social democratic compromise. This handshake with capital. Then I'll go home and piss myself and die, dreaming the next generation will have answers I do not.
I, on the other hand, am not an Asgardist.
Lucky bastard.
With a deep groan, he starts rubbing his hairy face.
Workers unite in unionization and guild power. It is all well and good, until it gets too loud. Make a bit too much noise and the true powers quickly and efficiently drop this illusionary mask facade. The esoteric spell that tricks us into taking their care, or that they are in any way Folkarian. So what about you, Cleric? Tell me, if not Asgardist, what are you voting for?
I'm voting for the new God King Wizard Emperor of Norvik.
Oh, who's that? Did not see that dude on the card.
Me, of course.
He nods. What are your qualifications? Come on, tell it to me. Why should you be the king?
Do it. Show him your intellect. He sniffs.
Now, for something else before I start ranting about the suffragist movement.
Your companion glances you. No, please. I really want to know what you think about the suffragists. The halfling wags a finger at you.
You're a brave man, Cleric.
Thanks. Stop doing that. He can't even see it.
When the first strokes of an election began, it was late Arcane era. about 30 years ago. In those early days, the suffragists were mostly dwarven women. They had the backing of a few hardcore universal Asgilish sects that had remained since the Great Project concluded. But when Earth died, and talks of an election grew loud, the dwarven women had a hard time getting through, both because of the less progressive Asgilists and, of course, the traditional cultural practices of the Earth folk. So the movement didn't kick into gear properly until, of course, human women decided to join. Oh boy, those are scary. Tell me about it. Mind you, this was after almost 2 decades of dwarven women pushing for universal suffrage. Within just a few years, with the voice of angry, rich human women yelling and writing and protesting, the palace patriarchy gave in. That's the history lesson. But here's the part I'm fucking furious over.
What?
Those rich human women? Do you know what happened to them?
He raised his hand.
Oh, hell you! Many of them are today's fascists! Can you imagine? They run an incredible campaign in order to get the right to vote, to break their chains of oppression, piss off the tyrannical men, smash the patriarchy, and so on, out to throw their lot in with that very same traditionalist ideology. An ideology that clearly wants to, well, of course, also just not have any voting going on at all, but specifically not allow women to vote.
I don't understand women.
Well, 2 greasy men are not going to figure it out exactly, but it won't stop me from thinking about it. A part of me thinks that it has to do with some type of opportunism. These are women whose time in the spotlight ended once they won the right to vote. Suddenly their entire platform of activism disappeared overnight. But even still, why nationalists?
They realize that their homeland needs protection, surely.
Perhaps there is some, if you don't mind me speculating wildly, some type of perverse psychosexual thing at play here.
What? No. Nationalism is pure ideology. There's no sex involved.
Sex.
Dwarven for the number 6 never stops being funny. Survival mechanism of all mortal folk. The trait that determines whether a sexually reproducing organism is of the male or female half of reproduction. Also a useless distraction. Duality of man, to sin, to be a father, to live, to reproduce in the name of worth. A beautiful union between those who carry the burden of life upon their souls. Sex. Fun! Highly misogynist statement. You should do better.
Or is it simply a question of class? It probably is. Yes, probably. They're mostly a group of rich people, and I would logically supersede their identity as women. If the rich human position in society is threatened, they have more to lose as rich than as women. It's a complex topic, and I don't have fucking time to think about it, even though I want to desperately figure it out. But that is just something I'm fascinated by, you know?
The halfling rants about things he's trying to understand. He's able to capture an audience that way, clearly. His points are somewhere close to coherent.
Anyway.
What do you know about the tea shop? The one that exploded?
Oh, horrific.
He gestures wildly towards the rocky wall.
Shit started shaking. It was as if the red rock of Toastad itself was cracking. For half a second or so.
You were down here when it happened?
Yes. I think I was asleep, but the sound awoke me.
Did you go check it out?
No. Someone told me later what it was like. I have work to do here.
You hear anything about it? Rumors?
You should not believe rumors, Cleric. But yes, I did hear some nasty stuff. Some people seem to think the owner did it himself since he's missing. Some other think the city did it since they printed a clear lie in the post. I've also heard people say the Asgilists are responsible since it was their hideout. Or that the Free Striders did it for the same reason, blowing up Asgilist opposition and so on. It's all bullshit, of course. Don't believe rumors.
What do you think happened? He shrugs violently. I've got some other questions.
Good.
Why don't you use magic in your mind healing?
It does not work. Not the greatest arcanist could invent a spell capable of fixing mental unwellness. If you happen to find a Cure Mind spell, you would make a fucking fortune casting it on rich people around the coast. Although just the thought of such magic gives me a sort of ontological nightmare. What does it mean to have a cured mind? Did your or some outside god at some point decide what constitutes a wound of the mind? In the same way suffering is used to heal wounds of the physical. Pain equals negativity. That is universal. The universal indicator of the negative. Yes. When you heal a person, magic itself targets the source of pain, as a sort of bullseye for reverting any harm, no matter the source or specific biology of the person. But what if one suffers from night terrors, caused by some horrors of the past? Should a mind heal spell remove your ability to have night terrors? Or should it remove their traumatic source from your memory? Or simply lessen your mental ability of neuroticism? Could the latter lead to a society without neurotic people? Would that also dampen other fears? What would you consider to be a good level of negative thoughts? It sends my mind spinning.
The world inside each mind needs to be diverse with both good and ill.
I agree! The most neurotic people might be somewhat tortured, yes, but they are also some of our greatest thinkers and philosophers, perhaps even partially due to that internal pain.
The halfling leans back in the chair.
No, the mind requires another method. One I and many others are attempting to untangle. We will see if any of us are even remotely successful in this brain bullshit.
How does death and resurrection work with all this stuff?
What do you mean, exactly?
Can death change your nature? A frown spread across his face.
Necromancer and old arcane era traditions did much study on the topic. And yes, death and subsequent resurrection can function as a reset for the mind in a way, but arguably no less than any other severe trauma. The data is hard to trust, however, so I will not say it for sure. There's much study to do on the topic, and I'm no expert.
Is there a soul?
The fuck do I know?
He laughs.
Ghosts exist, of course, as do wraiths and other foul undead spirit things. And there's much arcanist data on such things. Like, if a person is resurrected, their ghost ceases to be. That implies the ghost is the soul, right? But Speak with Dead does not. In fact, a ghost is technically able to ask questions to its own corpse. Very surreal. Which implies the soul also leaves a conscious remnant of itself, which is able to be animated through magic. And if a person is resurrected, even after very long periods of time, they will have no memory of their time as a free soul. Thus, there's evidence that the soul is not so much your personhood, that shit is all up in the brain from what we can see, but rather just some type of divine spark. Like a power source that wants to be one with the universe, or your god. The Lich is specifically a creature who consumes these so-called souls for their own gain, which is not very common. Destruction of that magical spark is of course a horrid crime of metaphysical levels, since resurrection, rebirth or unity with one's god is impossible at that point. But then again, back in the day it used to be common for mortals to sell their souls to various devils or aberrations.
So you're saying I should sell my soul?
I suppose the more interesting question to ask is, do you even own your soul? And who are you in relation to your soul?
Can one spontaneously resurrect themselves?
I've not heard of such thing, but why not?
I've got some other questions.
Okay.
You're a halfling, right? Give me your thoughts on the Clanland ordeal.
Ordeal?
He scratches his nose and looks up into the air. That bad, huh?
Bad? No. Understandable. Inevitable. My homeland is a show of broken people. The clans and my kin, especially those stuck under occupation across the Golden Line. They are being systematically destroyed, step by step, as the horde marches into Ascani land.
Isn't there a peace right now?
Peace, in the most devious technical sense, yes.
He grunts.
The clan lads deal, this armistice, was seen by many as a practical solution, since only 2 clans were left to be enslaved and integrated as Horde tributaries.
Slams his hand on the side of the chair.
It's your band-aid. Celestial view time in centuries, while we see in decades at best. Thus, they can take one piece at a time, with generational acceptance in between. It is the most clean method of genocide, one of radiant ghosts and insidiously toxic love.
What will happen to them?
Tomorrow? Nothing. In a decade? Not much. Fortnite will still stand by the time I die, in 30 or 40 years, but by the end of this new era, my homeland will surely be eradicated. That is my estimation.
Did you live in the clanlands?
When the golden line was drawn, yes. It is not that interesting, but I was on the western side when it happened. There wasn't enough food to go around, so I pulled some strings to smuggle myself east. It's a whole story. I can't say much more. My clan, the Appledents, all live in Tiberi, so it's not some big personal tragedy on my part. It's more of a folkish destruction, a grounded trauma, something generational. Even if I was there to witness it, I imagine you would feel something similar about the Coast War.
That's actually extremely interesting. You could write a book on that.
I have! Can't get it published though. No one wants to deal with legal threats from the Horde.
Fascinating. Even in Norvik?
Even in Norvik.
Isn't there a resistance in Fortsnip?
Of course, it's a whole damn mess. Ignoring the actual guerrilla resistance west of line, there has been a massive rally around anti-celestial sentiment in the east. They have attempted sanctions with Norvik, VK, and even Elam backing. There's even been coast-spanning outreach all the way to Kargamesh to build some type of coast-spanning halfling coalition. Nothing works. The Horde has a finger in most every trade port. They own land and hold strong ties to every regime. Even Norvik has not officially backed their neighbors. Without Earth and with Lady Fair not so existing, they are, as the kids say, it's teamed.
The kids do not say that.
As you can imagine, the halfling population of the hills are not too happy about this. But what can they do? An Asgard victory might change things, but the Free Striders are in the celestial pockets, as are the Patriarchs. So yes, there is resistance, but as of yet, there's no practical way out of this frog being bored, I'm afraid.
He's correct. The Golden Horde is performing impeccably in this geopolitical play. A great tragedy for this small folk to be crushed by a radiant fascist boot. Why do they want the clanat so badly? He waves his hands.
It is a basic resource conflict.
Oh?
Amber. You know, Electrum.
The Celestial wants their magical rocks.
The Commonwealth is the only reliable source of amber for the many esoteric use cases. Spell sorting, items, crafting, consecration, aesthetic attunement. It is an extremely useful material, a powerful one. So it is really no wonder the Horde wants to expand their golden line. If Norvik was more reliant on amber as a resource, I'm sure they too would covet these hills. But trading with the halflings does not seem so different from trading with the Horde. At least not today.
Are the Celestials influential in Norvik?
Yes. They have a lot of soft power in trade mostly. The Horde ambassador is known to fling their contracts around like a devil in disguise, mostly to stop halfling-owned corporations from operating without major hassle. Any halfling would tell you the same. They luckily don't care for tiny clinics like my own, but...
He sniffs.
They will not stop in the material realm. They must go into the psychic one as well.
What?
The Golden Horde. Their annexation of land is just the final step. Before that comes many little crushings of thoughts and dreams in the tyranny of pure ideology. They shape perception to maintain control.
That is indeed what they're doing. Pure soft power expansionism. An incredible evil. Those poor halflings. That's just all I wanted to ask.
Yes, he says and sniffs loudly.
I have some personal questions for you.
Nothing too interesting there, he says and sniffs. I see no reason why you would investigate an old halfling with nothing good to grant into the world.
Please? He waves his hand dismissively. Fine. Keep your secrets, old man. You're an expert in alignment, huh?
Somewhat. I wrote my masterpiece on the subject. That should account for somewhat of an understanding of the subject. But not enough. Never enough.
He sniffs. Can you change your alignment?
Of course! Any creature is capable of leaning into the axis, depending on their day-to-day actions.
So devils are just lazy then? He scratches his cheek.
Bit more complicated than that. Look, like all things, it's messy. Let's say you're waffle evil.
Okay.
You find that being labeled as evil is bad for your business or your work prospects, as one might. So you choose to donate a large sum of money to a charity that will inevitably help thousands. You might even save some lives with those spent coins.
But you said I was evil.
Yes, but you're trying not to be. In this case, you've performed an objectively good, selfless action for evil, selfish reasons. So what happens next?
Points at you.
Nothing.
Nothing?
But I did a good thing. You remain lawful evil. But let's change the parameters. Instead, you're a lawful evil man who genuinely wishes to repent, to pay for the many evil things you've done in your life before. If this man performs a selfless action with the intentions of selflessness, then all of a sudden he will begin to shift his alignment.
What if the outcome is really, really big?
Does not matter in the slightest. This effect has obviously been studied for centuries. It's aptly named alignment intent studies. I personally received my scholarship through studying delusional intent. We gathered a large amount of very mentally unwell people, mostly from local prisons and post-war reads, who truly believed in a very different worldview than most others. For example, this one man was certain that he had to kill his fellow man or the world would end, one murder a week. An extreme delusion. However, any detection spell showed him to be neutral good, and he felt terrible about all the murders he had committed. He was not selfish. In fact, he was more selfless than most, willing to perform acts that horrified him in order to save us all. The objective outcome of these actions matters not, no more than the outcomes of the actions of a person under a charm spell.
So what if you're not smart enough to understand your actions?
That is what we call the sentience line. It is not exact. Animals, for example, are true neutral by default. Any that is not a pure beast, but rather affected by esoteric forces on some level. That's the theory, at least. But imagine a man who loses enough of his mental faculties to be considered a beast, no longer living in a world of good or evil. Let's say he was chaotic good beforehand. What happens to his alignment? Does he suddenly turn true neutral? Is he stuck at chaotic good? Or does he somehow slide towards true neutral? Because that's another thing. There is no known way to perform a neutral action. All actions are either some level of selfish, selfless, lawful, or chaotic, on a wide spectrum. But you can never just move towards the center, it's just not allowed.
How do you end up at your alignment to begin with? Are you born with it?
No. All creatures are born true neutral, and all reported metrics show babies are unable to perform alignment shifts until the age of about 3 to 7, depending on the folk. But interestingly enough, it's shown that most people will only perform 1 or 2 alignment shifts in their entire lifetime. He scratches his cheek and sniffs a couple of times. During adolescence. After that, less than a tenth of folk will ever shift again. That is fairly substantially verified data as well. So essentially, despite having free will, folk will always lean towards the natural behavior over time.
So we're slaves to our natures?
On a broad scale, when looking at data, yes. But it was Civilics who wrote, "There's no honor in branding naturally selfless men as good. There's all honor in a selfish monster receiving the same title. Remember that."
What is the difference between alignment and personality?
Not too much correlation on paper. Studies on personality show that there's overlap. Conscientious folk tend to be more lawful. Neurotic and open folk tend to be more good to a minor degree. But we're talking about still unverified and very minor correlation.
Wait, does that mean everything I do is branded as good, evil, chaotic, or lawful? Even this? That I'm saying right now?
In some small sense, yes. The very act of speaking, no matter what you say, will always give you very, very small points in any direction. Although, could you imagine trying to keep track of it all? It would be insane! So no person would ever go to such lengths, so no need to keep track of stuff like that. It will only drive you mad.
So you can will yourself into changing your alignment?
In theory, yes.
I've made my decision.
I'm sorry?
I want to be a true neutral.
That is not how it works, Cleric. You'd have to be incredibly deluded, and I mean absolutely living in your own world mentally unstable in order to simply decide what your alignment were and actually get an outcome from it. But I suppose it can't hurt. Good luck being... Sorry, what did you choose again?
It was,
Yes?
lawful good, of course. Give until your bones hit the pavement. Makes more sense to focus on yourself without being constricted by rules. Chaotic then. Perhaps chaotic evil? Maybe don't say that out loud though. Neutral good. Is what keeps your innards from cramping at night. To know you're not a burden upon the world. Lawful evil. Structure with you on top, obviously. Chaotic good. Excuse me. Your heart tells you clearly every day you don't live for you, you live for others, against all the structural horrors the world has brought up around you. Not gonna like it, but the goal is to end up on top, right? Win every conversation, and you're not really moving along the axis of law, so you're neutral evil. Though seriously, whatever you do not tell that to the halfling. You should just opt out. Lawful evil.
A law-abiding citizen with nothing but himself in mind. Lovely.
He nods.
Good luck with that, Cleric.
What does good mean?
What a question! I cannot offer a universal answer. That is impossible, of course. But from the data, there are a few ways of distilling the essence of goodness. For example, the amount of good you are is directly correlated with the amount of time you spent inside your own mind, worrying about how much pain you've inflicted upon the world. And of course, practically, it also means performing selfless actions. Performative sacrifices done entirely for the purpose of helping others. Instant goodness.
What does evil mean?
Most people would say they know it when they see it, but practically, it means selfishness. For example, a person with a mental pathology that disallows compassion and empathy, making them naturally only hold care for no one but their own self. That is naturally an evil individual, but at the same time we are all basically evil, egotistical, disgusting creatures in the end, if push comes to shove, as they say, since obviously all of us have part that is focused more on our own survival rather than the survival of the fallen. Otherwise we would not be alive, in the evolutionary sense.
What does chaotic mean?
Now that can be difficult to parse sometimes. We've done many experiments to try to distill the exact meaning of it. It is difficult. Mainly because who decides what is law? Gods? Your local government? Village elder? No. What is chaos and order is universal. Allah cannot be chaotic, as contradictory as it sounds, if this distinction brings chaos into the world. No. What is chaos and order is universal. Allah cannot be chaotic, as contradictory as it sounds, if its dictation brings chaos into the world. But generally what we found is that there are a few common rules that chaos follows. Breaking down structures, whether that is a building or a hierarchy of society, lies, in fact any action that purposely goes against the known truth is considered chaotic. And of course, randomization. Rolling a dice is an inherently chaotic act, as is any form of gambling. That's actually one of the easier ways of measuring chaotic behavior. We used to go to the local gambling parlor. Good times. What does LAFO mean? LAFO actions can be difficult to perform. It's all about building. Crafting buildings for one, or hierarchies of structure, keeping families intact and orderly, organizations, as well as following the truth. There have been many tyrannical LAFO governments throughout history that quickly succumbed to chaos due to their warping of the truth itself. But then again, if you can convince people to enter another reality, if you will, where a lie is true, then all of a sudden the folk in that reality will be LAFO, despite working and living in a lie. It can get very convoluted and fascinating. Who decides what any of this means? There are theories. Some says it's the gods. Some says it's York himself who controls the parameters in this world of his. Some believe it's simply inscribed into the universe, an absolute law. That sounds stupid. I do not disagree. Does alignment matter? Oh, not in any real way. It can be a tool, but if you cannot read it properly, seeing a man branded with chaotic evil means nothing. But if you learn, it can be used to understand folk better. You can statistically expect an evil person to act in their own interest, and you can expect a good person to act in the interest of others. A smart man can use this to his advantage, which is also an evil act, I believe. Funny how it goes. Why isn't it illegal to be evil? Might as well make it illegal to be sentient. Branding it as evil might be the core problem there. There were arcanists who created alternate naming conventions for alignments. Altruism and egotism, for example, but it did not catch on, as they say. But everyone has to be evil sometimes. Imagine your family is starving, alongside two other families who are also starving. The other families are smaller folk who need only half as much food. Would you feed your own family or sacrifice them to feed the other two families? The only correct option. Feed your family, except yourself. Use your own food to feed the children of the other families. Then die. Honorably. I don't have a family of my own. No, it's a tough experiment. Imagine if you do. Depends. What are the other families like? They are just as nice and lovely as your own. And my family is very nice and lovely. What would you choose? I'd feed my family except myself. My own food would go to the children of the other families. That, among other options, is, I would argue, a pretty selfless action indeed. But what exactly is objectively considered in alignment terms in this scenario? Is it selfish to care for your own people before others? Has it more to do with the exact number of people who live or die, suffer or prosper, in a purely utilitarian perspective? These questions have all been asked before, and have already been answered. From what can we see, especially looking at the data collected from horrendously unethical experiments performed by arcanist scholars, it's just about intention. If a man chooses to focus on his own family, but feels really bad about the other starving families, then he will be more good than another man who does not think of the other suffering at all. The proximity rule states that the emotional distance between yourself and the target determines the level of selfishness. If you sacrifice your life to protect your family, that's more selfish than if you sacrifice your life for a stranger. The latter is more good. So in the end, a genuinely selfless person will always have a much easier time being branded with good than a naturally selfish one. He scratches his hairy eyebrows simultaneously. By the gods! I talk too much! Make me stop! That's all about alignment for now. Okay, good. Wipe some sweat off his brow. I want to inquire about this folk spirit. Imagine, if you will, the origin of our stories. Sure. Good. As sentient folk, we clearly have the base ability to come up with random ideas and turn them into emotionally resonant tales. Tales that explore the conditions of life itself and make us feel many things. But an interesting thing happens if one were to study the core part of these stories. That even if we look at stories crafted in entirely different bands, separated, isolated tribes, or even in worlds outside Yor itself, there's overlap. Should I just let him speak? Just repeat the last thing you said. That'll make you sound smart. Overlap? Indeed! Humans who live in the remote mountains of Yum have the same repeated tropes in their foundational myths as humans in reeds. Same for halflings. Their Stormbloods of Kargamesh have the same variations as my people in Fornip, despite being separated in esoteric evolution by at least 10 millennia. It is as if every folk is hunted by a spirit, like an unconscious collective dream of concepts and ideas that follows us, even when those separate folk originate from entirely different worlds. Could you imagine? Two folk arrive through two separate gates of yore. They are alien to one another, culturally, spiritually, biologically. Yet they share those core myths. That's what I'm studying. Don't let him rant anymore, please. That is very interesting. Isn't it? Most importantly, it's provable. It's like a type of collective unconscious spread across each folk type. A unified soul of people. What happens upon merger? How is it provable? Reproducibly. Analysis. Cultures and folks who had no contact with one another, even originated from different worlds, both have the same core myths. Narrative traits, archetypes, repeated tropes. It's the same method used when uncovering ancient dead languages, using common denominators to narrow down similarities and differences. He adjusted his mustache. Now, there hasn't been that much reproducibility yet from my peers. I'm still working on getting other scholars in on the topic. Is there a folk spirit that's better than the others? Better means nothing. There's so much weight put on to making one greater in some perspective than others, and it's just a ridiculous game of dick swinging. Of course, I also hate this horrid idea that every culture is amazing and wonderful and, everyone is holding hands and dancing together. No! Every culture is equally terrible. But then they are all specialized. These symbols we produce are clothed in meaning based on lived experience. A human living in the frozen tundra will derive and require much different practical uses of those core myths than a man living in the harsh deserts. Yet each folk type has its own fundamental traits that these symbols represent. You talk a lot. I know. Just tell me to shut up when you get tired. So it's a type of collective unconscious. A very fancy way to praise it. I would say if all sentient folk shared those same core traits, it would be exactly that. I do look for that. The possibility of distilling not the core myths of each folk, but all sentience. It would not surprise me if there was another layer to this puzzle. What happens when two folk types merge? Ah, yes. This finger. No clue. He's honest. It's even harder to pinpoint due to the nature of merging cultures. In cases like humans and dwarves here in Norvik, there's more data but not enough to say anything of note. But it seems to me like the folk spirit remains pure, in a sense, in one direction or the other. For example, humans can obviously reproduce with dwarves, but the offspring is always aesthetically and biologically speaking very human, which does not make sense biologically. We're scientifically speaking different species. Dogs do not breed with cats, do they? The same effect can be seen in most functional folk mixed breeding. The same effect can be seen in most functional folk mixed breeding. Logically, it should not be. Evolutionary adaptation dictates the creation of a mixture, not a one-sided creature. So it's theorized to be some type of powerful esoteric effect that allows this reproduction to take place. In the scholarly community we call it the also effect, one-sided offspring. You know a lot about this topic, huh? Once again, I'm afraid this is all coming from experiments performed by arcanists. Horrifically so. So one-sided is always dominant, huh? Not biologically speaking, but esoterically? Yes, objectively so. There's a list of these hierarchies in some textbooks, but it's a pretty taboo topic, as you might imagine. But doesn't that mean that dwarves would eventually stop existing in Norvik and just become human? That is a good question. If two people live alongside one another for a long enough time, and they reproduce with one another equally, but the offspring are all aesthetically human, then yes, eventually there would only be one people and be a people who look human. However, there's a big factor in charge here. That is the elusive and enticing topic of mating press. There's not much proven data I can point to, but if you allow me to speculate, then I would say only a minority of the population of any tribe will ever have a strict preference for mating outside of that tribe. Without a basic assumption like that, I do not believe the tribe itself would remain intact enough for civilization to emerge. So in the case of dwarves in Norvik, I do not believe the two tribes can ever truly merge. Cooperate? Yes. Cohabitate? Of course. Even mingle and date and crossbreed? Absolutely. Why not? But merge? No. Impossible. Of course, this assumption ignores the also effect, so it feels a bit crackpotty. Take it as you wish.
And you think the folk spirit follows the one-sided offspring?
Maybe. I have not done enough work to say anything for sure. Nor have I been peer-reviewed. Nor am I a very sane or stable individual.
He grins. I think I understand now. The goblin crosses his arms, ready to hear your comment. The halfling scholar leans back in his armchair. I think you've got something cool cooking here.
Oh, you do?
He gives you a quick nod.
I would not spend my old age here if I did not agree to in some deep sense.
He sniffs.
Thank you for listening to my rant, Cleric. You as well, my goblin friend.
You're welcome. Can you give me some mind healing?
Oh, of course. I'm aware I'm a bit swamped in work right now. I'll get to you a book slot. I have time after the election. You should come visit then.
Can't you make time now?
No, I'm afraid I cannot. Truth be told, I'm very overworked. I'm struggling with a certain topic.
Makes a noise that might once have been a cough. The old man is frustrated. He's trying to avoid even thinking about it. What?
I'm focusing on a specific idea of civics. The idea of two opposite faces of your ego, masculine and feminine. But I just can't seem to get past a certain obstacle.
Is he going to keep talking no matter what I do? Oh yes, you have no control here.
You see, there's a work called Book of the Mind. It is, in my opinion, civics' masterpiece in figurative sense.
Oh, is it like a secret book, hidden deep in some dungeon?
Oh no, I own several copies. There's a rare edition of this book, which contains a rumored so-called final foreword from Cividex himself. In this foreword, he apparently reveals a revelation about his categorization of the psyche, specifically on the topic of gender.
Truly eldritch knowledge.
Might be nothing, but it would be highly interesting to get my grubby hands on it. He leans in and whispers, and more importantly, it would bring me great pleasure to know how much Cividex would be spinning in whatever Tarzanian mass grave he's buried in if he knew a halfling like myself was pioneering in his footsteps. Ha ha!
He wasn't a fan?
Like most humans of his era, he was very, let's say, humanity first.
Snurre leans back in his chair.
This final 6th edition of the book was only printed in 10 copies. The publisher then hiked up the price in order to sell it to collectors. Those collectors have then spent the last 3 decades using these copies as a form of investment, making sure to keep the content of that foreword a tightly guarded secret.
Smart way of making money.
No doubt. Like any good capitalistic method, it sucks value from a work like mosquito sand.
Mosquito sand, a type of sand elemental, known for capturing unsuspecting victims and slowly draining their blood, before using their dying screams to attract more victims. So what? You want me to find this rare book? He nods.
I drank a bit too much the other night, and in my desperation, I paid a diviner to cast Locate Object for me. I didn't expect anything, and it was very expensive. However, she actually found it. A copy of the 6th edition Book of the Mind is here, very close to Waterlane View. And she even told me the exact direction. He points to the floor. About 40 meters straight down.
Meters?
Right. That is something like 100 feet. 150 maybe. Sorry, the diviner was a free strider. You know how they are like in reeds. Silly decimal people.
It's in the city below?
Yes, exactly.
And you trust this diviner?
Well, trust might be a bit strong of a word. But she was connected to the free striders. And while they are ruthless capitalists, they would not keep a scam artist around. Or if they did, it would be very funny, of course.
Well, what was the name of this diviner?
Lisa, I believe.
He sniffs.
She used to have a hut on top of the Free Stride building. It wandered away, I think.
Wandered? Makes a little walking motion with his fingers.
Skedoodled, I'd say.
That's very strange. An esoteric house?
She seemed kind. I hope she stops working for those fucking parasites.
This sounds like a quest.
Sure, why not?
So many side quests, Snow mutters to himself.
Delve into the dangerous tunnels below and get me that book. Don't get yourself killed. In exchange, I will, well, what the fuck kind of reward do you want?
You swear a lot.
Yes, fuck you. Life is pain, get over it.
I don't know. Do you have a magic item or something?
He shrugs. I have books in droves. You know what?
He says and snaps his fingers.
The book itself, it's expensive and probably magical in some sense. Get me the book, let me take a look at that forward, and you keep the book afterwards. That's still a quest, right?
But I don't have to even return to you in that case. I can just take the book and go.
True. I suppose I can offer some guidance in understanding the book as well. If you let me make a copy of that forward real quick.
This quest will be completed.
Huzzah!
Please don't huzzah.
Huzzah! I'm not an expert in what kind of weird shit is down there. But the city below is dangerous, so don't wander blindly. Good luck, Cleric.
That's all for now. Thank you, citizen.